Hello, everybody. Welcome to Word World. Tonight, we have a very special guest who we're happy to welcome back to our program, an alumni of the first graduating class, our program manager for 10 years, our founding light, Teresa Walsh. Can we turn the lights back on? We will, of course, welcome her all tonight and at our reception, and at a special reception on Thursday, May 16th in the afternoon, so mark your calendars for that. Tonight is our third Word World, and many of our second years, our graduating second years, can enjoy tonight's Word World a little bit better because their final drafts of their thesis have been turned in. Or they should have been turned in. They really should have. Congratulations, you have met one of the first major deadlines as a writer. And you must all feel relieved, and I can assure you the faculty understand and feel relieved too. Because no matter how many times we tell you to not freak out over your thesis, and we say this many, many times, we realize it is hard not to. You've been told in so many different ways that your thesis is a culmination of your work here, and you want it to be the best it possibly can be. You want to make your committee proud, and you want it to be read and enjoyed and published. But your handsome bound thesis will not be the only accomplishment you take away when you graduate from our program this year. You will also take away lifelong writing colleagues, first readers, future writing group members, and dear friends who will cheer you on through this next phase of writing outside of the nest. Tonight we will see and hear from 6 more excellent writers from this year's graduating class. And they certainly reflect the diversity and ingenuity we are so proud of here at CCA. And I'm very pleased to introduce our first reader, Norrena. Often mistaken for the love child of Hollywood Square's legendary comedian actor Paul Lynde, a.k.a. Uncle Arthur from the beloved 1970s television series Bewitched, and Tammy Faye, Norrena not only has a penchant for all things comedic, but also dramatic, in particular stage drama. He's inspired by, yet admittedly writes nothing like, such hugely successful playwrights as Tony Kushner, Terrence McNally, and of course, William Shakespeare. A career playwright through and through, and meaning he spent his career trying to become one, his dedication to the craft includes decades of ushering at Berkeley Rep and ACT, teaching at Young Actors Workshop, serving on the board at Playwrights Center of San Francisco, writing theater reviews for local media, shooting press photography and videography, and most recently, writing a well-received 10-minute play for a popular San Francisco Bay-based play festival. He's thrilled about his CCA MFA, but even more so about his first full-length play. Welcome, Norrena.
Well, way down there. I wanted to just, before we get started, I just wanted to say a couple of things about the work, which is now a full-length play, and I've been working on it for longer than I want to admit, but under wonderful tutelage, and Claire Chafee, who is in the house, has been a wonderful, wonderful inspiration. And the play addresses an issue that is, certainly not shy in the media right now, and it has to deal with same-sex marriage. And I started following this issue almost a decade ago when I watched my friends go through a tumultuous time of having marriages granted, then reversed, and then sitting through political, very, very frustrating experiences. I have a pair of friends who I've been to 3 of their weddings. They are in the house tonight, so I wanted to, Ted and Brian. And I know that we're on the cusp of expecting some very positive, I like to think so, news regarding this issue, but it has literally torn many of my friends' lives inside and out, and not just tax reasons. I mean, it's been very difficult and challenging, so I was really super excited to write a comedy to address this issue. Thank you.
Lyle and Marcus's apartment. Lyle is reading a newspaper on the couch. A hurried knock at the door. Lyle tosses the paper onto the coffee table and goes to the door. He opens the door. Sylvia enters.
How many times do I have to tell you to ask before you open the door?
You said you were on your way like 10 minutes ago.
Don't think some crazed person could get here sooner?
Sylvia steps into the living room.
What's that smell?
What smell?
It's sweet and sort of... Were you baking?
No, Hector was.
Oh.
You remember Hector. He lives down the hall.
The Spanish one?
He's Mexican.
Oh, yeah. Such a dear. Of course I remember him. He's single, isn't he?
Well, I told you about his partner, the one he took care of in San Diego, before he...
Oh, of course. But life must go on. I know.
I know you know.
Marcus isn't here, is he?
You can relax.
So, it was just you and Hector here. Just the two of you. Baking.
You never give up, do you?
I'm a mother. Is Marcus out playing?
He's working. He works at the gym.
I know. Uh-huh.
He works, remember?
I know where Marcus works.
Sylvia sits down on the sofa.
So what's all this about men marrying men at City Hall?
Well, women too.
Well, I don't see how what's happening is legal. There's no protocol. You can't just change the law willy-nilly.
Apparently you can.
I don't like it. I don't think it'll hold. I don't.
Jesus, Ma. This is a historical moment for California, for thousands of couples.
All right. It's just too fast. Things that happen at this speed tend to crash. That's all I'm saying.
Could you try to be supportive? Could you?
I am supportive. But I'm realistic too. No one wants to see you walk down that aisle more than me. God knows. And this has all come around, well, there's just no safety net, that's all. You can't treat people like that. It's wrong.
So you think all these marriages are valid?
Valid?
You don't think that?
Valid? Well, I suppose they are today, but what about tomorrow? And the next day? It's all being contested, and parties on both sides are accusing the mayor of misusing his power.
This is one of the greatest political efforts in decades.
I don't disagree. Really, I don't.
Good.
But right now, there's your sister.
Sylvia removes a piece of paper from her purse and hands it to Lyle.
What's this?
A list of practitioners who specialize in annulments.
Why would you... Did you talk to Marcus?
No, why would I talk to Marcus?
Well, nothing.
We've got to act fast. Your sister's in trouble.
She can handle this. She has to recognize her own mistakes if she's ever going to stop making them.
No, I mean it. She's really backed up the toilet this time.
Let me guess. You don't like her husband either.
It's worse than you can imagine. Born again.
Who's born again?
He is, and now she is. You know how impressionable she is.
Andrea's a born-again Christian? Maybe she's been brainwashed. They do that,
Oh, mock me all you want. But whether she's been indoctrinated, cultivated, brainwashed, fortified, whatever, there's no time to waste.
Why would she just go off and marry someone like that?
You can ask her yourself. I've arranged for a celebration dinner at your place.
Why my place?
The more homosexuals, the better. Invite Hector, too. Strength in numbers.
You what? You want us to tackle him?
Psychologically, yes. Maybe even a blitz.
But if she's happy.
Your sister is perpetually happy. She's so often happy, I sometimes worry she doesn't know when she's not. I swear it doesn't come from either you or your father.
Maybe you dropped her.
Sylvia points to the sheet of paper in Lyle's hand.
If I dropped her, I can pick her up again. That's what being a mother is.
Ma, you can't just force an annulment on someone.
Why not? This is clearly a mockery of a marriage.
It's legal, mockery or not.
You think,
And it's her marriage, not yours.
you think she should live this way?
Does she regret it?
She doesn't know how to regret a parking ticket. She sees them as
Learning opportunities for better driving.
My girl needs our help.
But does she want it? I mean, how bad is it?
She's convinced she must lead the gays to salvation.
Okay, it's bad.
Lyle studies the piece of paper.
An annulment case can be initiated by either the husband or the wife in a marriage. The party initiating the annulment must prove that he or she has the grounds to do so, and if it can be proven, the marriage will be considered null and void by the court. Blah, blah, blah. The following is a list of common grounds. Bigamy. Either party was already married to another person at the time of the marriage.
Lyle looks up at Sylvia, who shakes her head.
No.
Forced consent. One of the spouses was forced or threatened into marriage and only entered into under duress.
That could work. I'm telling you, this guy's done a number on her.
Wait, there's more. There's fraud. One of the spouses agreed to the marriage based on the lies or misrepresentation of the other.
Oh yes, that's good. Salvation my ass.
Marriage prohibited by law. Marriage between parties that based on their familial relationship is considered incestuous. I'm assuming they're not related. Mental illness. Yes. Either spouse was mentally ill or emotionally disturbed at the time of the marriage. One could argue she's mentally ill.
Your sister's not mentally ill. She's just terminally joyous.
Same thing.
Oh, stop it now. This is serious. She's going to turn your sister against you.
This is it. Here we go. Mental incapacity. Either spouse was under the influence of drugs or of alcohol or drugs at the time of the marriage and was unable to make informed consent.
I don't think he's involved with drugs. He's pretty straight-laced from what I can tell. And your sister's never needed them.
Where, tell me again, where did you say they got married?
Oh, Nevada, the desert, someplace called Fireman. Fireman?
Burning Man?
That's it.
Jackpot. That's a no-brainer. Everyone there is completely wasted. If we can get her to leave him, all she has to do is tell the judge where they met, and it'll be as good as a null.
Oh, that's much better. Thank you. I knew you would help.
Lyle hands the paper back to Sylvia.
But she'll have to want the annulment, you know.
We'll make her want it. She's lucky to have us. What? What is it?
You know that smell you mentioned earlier?
The sickly sweet smell?
Yeah, it was wedding cake for Marcus and me. Yesterday at City Hall, we got married.
Lights out.
Okay, so thank you very much. I am pleased now to introduce our next reader. This is actually an introduction written by Liz Mayorga, and I am here to introduce Jennifer Virskus. Jenn Virskus does not mess around. She quit her job as the assistant art director at a magazine in Aspen and moved to San Francisco to get her MFA in writing. She came to CCA determined to write not one but 2 novels, and she did. When she isn't writing or researching world history, Jenn spends her time skiing down mountain slopes and sailing through dangerous ocean waves. I have never met anyone so willing to test her limits. No one with this much desire to learn. For Jenn, it's not enough to study Central and Eastern European culture. It's not enough to speak 5 languages. Jenn must explore things fully and live them. She calls her grandmother on the phone once a week to ask the questions books can't answer. She flies to Eastern Europe, to her grandmother's homeland of Lithuania, to explore the landscape that has shaped her family history. Jenn maps the land's struggles alongside family conflict and international war. Such a complicated relationship turns Lithuania into an intimate relative. It's no wonder resilience drives every character in her stories. Whether it's her grandmother or Louisa, Jenn writes about strong women who use their intelligence and sensibility to survive. They are the women in her life, her mother, her grandmother, her friends abroad, who have inspired her with their wit and endless warmth. Jenn comes from a legacy of brave women. Strength gets passed down from one generation to the next, and so came to be Jenn Virskus. It wasn't the cold winters in Michigan or Lithuania that made her this tough. No, tough is in Jenn's blood. There's something to be said about her drive and discipline. It's worth envying, maybe because she makes me feel lazy. If I didn't know any better, I'd say Jenn has superpowers, which is how she managed to write 2 novels in such a short amount of time. But I don't think she would appreciate such a hyperbole. Superpowers don't exist. Besides, that would take away from the wonder of the human imagination and the hard work that comes with writing. What Jenn does appreciate, however, is a good reader. And so you will have the opportunity to listen to her stories, to her beautiful language, her carefully crafted sentences, and the attention to details that bring her characters and their worlds to life. Jenn Virskus is all about honesty. She's all about admiring the beauty that exists despite all obstacles. That much is reflected in her work.
Wow. Liz, I just want to say that I love you. And I'm not really the kind of girl who does a lot of shout-outs, but my mentors are here tonight, and they have had quite an important hand in the work that I'm going to read. So thank you very much to Gloria Frim, John Lasky, and Judith Sarin. I'll read 2 sections, and the first section is from my thesis, which is my novel inspired by my grandmother's story. My grandmother screens her calls. I listen to the phone ring 5 times before I hear her voice. I could never call her in an emergency from an unknown number. She wouldn't answer the phone. Hello? Labas, Grandma, I say, stretching the long cord of the telephone across my dorm room to sit down at my desk. Oh, labas. She draws out the Lithuanian word for hello, like it's a huge surprise to hear my voice on the other end. Not only do I know she recognizes my phone number, she answered it, didn't she? But I call her every week at exactly the same time. Wednesday morning at 10, my time. I'm making my breakfast. I know this already. She's 2 hours ahead in Florida, but she sleeps late and eats breakfast at noon. I'm eating my breakfast too. What you having? She always wants to know. Granola and yogurt. Oh yeah. As if this is something great to consider. And then she tells me what she's eating. Black bread, no butter, a piece of salmon, and a leaf of romaine lettuce. Why she was up so late. Watching a movie on the Catholic Channel about a Polish priest who rescues 2 young women. About all of her aches and pains, gallbladder, pancreas, left knee, bunion on right foot.
And the latest mean thing Teta Maria has said to her, that Teta's kidneys are in worse shape than her gallbladder. I listen while I eat my granola and flip through a magazine, occasionally muttering, oh yeah, really? I've heard it all before. When she pauses for a moment, I seize the opportunity. Grandma, I have to write a paper about World War II. Can you tell me about Dresden? Oh yeah? What do you want to know? I need to know what it was like to be caught in the bombing and about Elgimentus. Yeah, sure, she says, as if I had asked her for the recipe for babka, the sweet raisin bread she sends us at Easter, not relive what I can only imagine was the worst episode of her life. Actually, I've asked for her babka recipe. She won't give it to me over the phone. Just wait a minute. She sets down the phone. I hear something hard sliding on the counter, the clink of silver against porcelain, pill bottles rattling as she opens them and shakes out her pills, the of water pouring into a glass from the ever-present pitcher of boiled water on the counter, slippered feet shuffling across linoleum, a chair being pulled out, and, okay, I tell you how it was. I've got a pen in my hand and my notebook is already open in front of me. My grandmother likes to talk. One question can get her going for hours. Dresden was the most beautiful city in Europe. I dreamed a long time about visiting it. The phone slips from between my shoulder and my ear as I reach for another tissue to wipe my eyes and blow my nose. What's the matter? Are you sick? I didn't realize how much of the story I haven't heard before, how much I still don't know. No, Grandma, I'm not sick. It's after 1 o'clock. I've already missed 2 classes. My grandmother has been talking for almost 3 hours about the train and the bombing and the baby. Anyway, you see how much I told you? Now you know the whole story. It's hardly the whole story, I think. She hasn't even told me how they decided to leave Lithuania, or why they went to Tübingen, or where my dad was born. But I don't know how much more I can stand to hear at one time. Yeah, Grandma, thanks. I should have enough for my paper. Well, that's how it was. The most important thing is that you know. You're the only one I'm talking with. You're the only one who knows everything. I know you do the most with it. I look at my notes. I wrote almost 10 pages while she was talking. I'll send you a copy of my paper when it's done, I offer. Sure, I put it in the album. That's where everything goes, in the album. She has an album for each of us, all 8 cousins. You send the Grandma a copy of everything. I don't think I know everything yet, Grandma. You will, Vaikala. And then someday, you will write the whole story about how we ran from those communists. This next section is from the novel that I was writing when I started at grad school. It doesn't have a title, I just call it Louisa. Louisa was still the only passenger in her compartment. She wasn't sleepy yet, so she pulled the sliding door shut and sat on the middle bunk to look out the window at the lights of Bayonne. She was mesmerized by the lights and the streets and the cars, at first so bright, and then, as the train began to pick up speed, everything faded into the blackness of the countryside. Soon her eyes strained to pick out the silhouette of a village on the horizon. Suddenly, the door was flung open, and the light from the hallway spilled into the compartment. A soldier was standing there. He began to speak, quickly, and with a slightly unfamiliar accent. Bonsoir, excusez-moi. The soldier saw that she was alone in the room. Est-ce que ça vous ne dérange pas? J'ai une réservation pour le numéro 35, là-bas, en haut. He pointed to the top bunk opposite hers. Louisa was startled, and it took her a moment to get her bearings and find her words in French. Her voice, shaking a little, said, No, pas de problème. After all, he had a reservation. How could she say no? And with that, the soldier set down his green canvas rucksack and began to make his bed. Louisa quietly watched him. He looked to be about 19 or 20. He had dark hair and even darker eyes, his olive skin gently tanned. He was tall and looked quite handsome in his neatly pressed uniform. When he was done, he sat down opposite her and took out a small plastic box. There was a little table under the window, and he arranged a chunk of extremely stinky hard white cheese, a saucisson, a miniature baguette, and a small chunk of butter. Next to the food, he placed a military knife, and then took out a small bottle of wine and a tiny plastic cup. The bottle had a screw top, so it was easy to open, and he poured himself some wine. Looking up, he caught Louisa's stare. She glanced away. Voulez-vous un petit peu de vin? His voice was gentle. She replied, Non merci, je ne bois pas. She was, after all, barely 16, and though she had tasted beer at a party or two, she had never tasted wine in her life. She was, however, enthralled by the stinky cheese and decided that it was a perfect time to get over her shyness. So she asked, Est-ce que je peux goûter le fromage? He frowned thoughtfully. Vous êtes Américaine? Louisa feared she would hear that sentence often this year if she didn't improve her accent. With the sadness of defeat in her voice, she replied, Oui. The soldier brightened up immediately. With an accent so thick it was nearly impossible to make out his words as English, he said, I can speak English if you prefer. Louisa did not prefer. She was in France to learn French, after all. With all the confidence of a soon-to-be 16-year-old, she said, Non merci, je viens en France pour apprendre le français. Ah oui, said the soldier. But you will stay in France a long time perhaps, and we practice your English with so many people. I don't have anyone to practice my English with. Please, you make an exception and speak English with me. The soldier held out a little slice of cheese. His French accent was like velvet. Louisa had vowed not to use her English unless it was an emergency and absolutely necessary. But it was late, the soldier was nice, and so she decided to make an exception. Well, okay, just this once. She politely took the cheese and put it into her mouth. It did not taste like it smelled. It was rich and buttery, had an unusual texture and a combination of hard, like real Parmesan, but not Kraft. Also greasy, like, well, she'd never tasted a cheese that was greasy before. But she liked it. It was also smooth and creamy and a little bit salty. For just a moment, she closed her eyes to savor it. The soldier, watching her intently, said, You like the cheese? It is from Beaufort, from the French Alps, my favorite. Louisa opened her eyes and smiled. I think it's my favorite, too. You must try it like this. He broke off a piece of baguette. Crumbs fell all over the floor. Using his military knife, he lightly spread a touch of butter on it, sliced off a sliver of saucisson, a thin slice of cheese, and handed Louisa a neat little sandwich. Louisa took a bite. It was almost too much to bear. The creaminess of the cheese combined with the spicy meat, something like pepperoni, but nothing she'd ever tasted on pizza. The saltiness of the butter on top of the crunchy baguette, it was wonderful. With her mouth still a little too full, she said, This is the best thing I've ever tasted. How long do you stay in France? I'll go to school this year and then spend the next summer traveling with my host sister. Alors, just wait. You will try many things much more delicious than this. This is a simple peasant's lunch, but you must try it with some wine. He took out another small cup, poured a taste in it, holding it out to her. Tiens. Louisa thought about it. She's going to be in France for a while, and she supposed she'd have to taste the wine sometime. Well, I suppose I'll be 16 in 23 minutes. I guess a little taste would be okay. Ah, it is your birthday! Mais oui, il faut le célébrer. He held the wine to her. Louisa, trying to appear like an adult, gently swirled the wine in the cup the way she'd seen her parents do it. She smelled it, slowly took a sip. The wine wasn't as bad as she thought it might be. In fact, it was actually quite smooth, tasted of black currant. It was rich, but not overwhelming. It went perfectly with the sausage and cheese. It is only a simple bottle. I am sure you will also taste much better wine this year. No, it goes perfectly with the food, thank you. He had been so nice to share his dinner with her, she thought she should offer something in return. I have a cupcake that my friend's mother made for me for my birthday. Ah, c'est gentil. But first we eat the dinner, and after the dessert. He held her another sandwich and then made one for himself. Bon appétit. Thank you for the wine. What's your name? The soldier stood up. With a little bow, he said, Olivier de Garret, à votre service. There wasn't a lot of room between the bunks of beds, but Louisa stood up too and did a little curtsy. Je m'appelle Louisa Sinclair, enchantée de te rencontrer. Alors, ma petite Louisa, I think it is time for your birthday. Louisa looked at her watch. It was 11:59. Olivier poured the last swallows of wine into their cups. Louisa climbed into her bunk and pulled her cupcake out of her backpack. It was chocolate with pink frosting, and it had a little candle in it, which Olivier lit and insisted on singing to her, Joyeux anniversaire. Louisa smiled to herself and blew out her candle. If her birthday celebration was any indication, then this was going to be a very good year indeed. Our next reader grew up in southern Indiana, a child of Pakistani immigrants. Her poetry and film is a fusion of narrative, politics, and law, or what I like to call creative non-poetry. As an undergraduate at Indiana University Bloomington, she received the Ruth Hall's Outstanding Young Artist Award in poetry. Just prior to attending CCA, she earned a law degree from the University of California Davis School of Law, where she specialized in body burden research, critical race theory, and family law mediation. While at CCA, she received the All-College Honors Award in Poetry and was awarded a Berkeley Film Foundation student grant for her short film, Anarchally Blossoms, which will premiere at Asterisk Gallery in San Francisco tomorrow night and also here in Timken on Monday night. Both screenings start at 8 p.m. and there will be receptions starting at 7 p.m. just before. And it's a great film. I've seen it, so you should all come. On a personal note, Samina and I met during our first semester when we bonded on the couch at the back of the room during Friday's seminar. We also attended Anita's conflict literature class together, where she loudly and proudly declared that she was a poet, not a fiction writer, but she was going to give it a shot. Throughout that first semester, I realized that she was secretly writing a novel. Unfortunately, she is also keeping the secret from herself. One of these days, though, that secret will be out, and I will look forward to reading it. Until then, it is my pleasure to introduce my dear friend, the ever-lovely Samina Chaudhry Hitch.
This is called Ring. I took off my engagement ring and wedding band and threw them both as hard as I could into the black, towards where Ty might be. My rebellion against my own life, my hurt heart lashing out against my marriage, my maybe family, my no real home. Things taken, given, lost, surrendered. I had to control something, and the ring was there, where it always was, and I did it because I knew it would hurt. It was something I would never do, so I did it. I imagined myself standing at the edge of Highway 1, tossing the ring out into the ice plant-covered bluffs. It flickers past the thermal riding birds into the Pacific, but I can't see it when it gets to a certain point, so I never see it hit the water. Or I am at the shore and I fling it out into the high surf of the morning's coastal storm. And as Ty and I are driving cross-country with my daughter and the dogs in the back seat, further and further away from where the ring might be, I imagine throwing it into the shifting landscapes, wind gales, tide pools, rice fields, and almond orchards. I flick it up onto mesas, into the chalky tent rocks of the desert, where it gleams in a pile of Apache tears, prey for the magpies or jays who like shiny things. I think I see it over and over, glinting on the shoulders of the freeways of the Southwest, in the snows of the Grand Canyon. It belongs in the Grand Canyon, in a place where no one will ever come across it, a place entirely unreachable. That's where I would have thrown it if I wanted to lose it. I don't want to talk about it when Ty calls me at 3 a.m. while I am still driving to Bolinas to ask me if I have the diamond ring with me. Only deer are awake at 3 a.m, a family of them crossing the road in Fair Oaks, and then the young buck staring at me dead on in the winding hills of Marin, and I'm awake, driving to meet my cinematographer for my last film shoot. And Ty is awake, upending the cottage, looking for the ring. I'm not thinking it might be with me, that it could have tumbled into my piles of clothes on the floor that I pack into the car, that I grab during the rainstorm as I hop in and out of the car at the turnouts overlooking the raging ocean. I'm not imagining, like I will for many weeks afterward, that the ring's little flaw in the setting that always hooked itself onto threads has hooked itself to me, and as the ring is whipped around by heavy winds, it clinks onto the asphalt, sinks deep into the mud of scrubby fields, or when I stop to watch the Douglas firs and bishop pines sway in tandem and listen to the low and steady creak of wood under the weight of wood, the ring drops on the dried needles at my feet, soundless. My daughter wasn't there when I lost it. The next time I see her, it's the first thing she notices. We are in Santa Fe. Where is it? You never take that off, she says. I've rehearsed this already, and I say, it's in safekeeping. She'll forget. She's 8. If she knows I threw it, then she won't stop thinking about it. What do I remember from when I was 8? Not my mother's rings. It is my engagement ring. Ty spent everything he had on the ring in the antique jewelers in Nevada City minutes before they closed. They locked the door behind us. We picked the ring out together. It was raining, cool mountain rain, late October, maybe Halloween, maybe already November. It's a little big, but I said that's good because when we have babies, my fingers will get fat, and I want to always wear the ring. He leveraged 3 credit cards, and it was ours. We walked out and stopped under the pink awning, and he proposed again outside the shop in the middle of the emptied-out slanted city, on his knee, in the little mountain town where we had both been before we knew one another. We had escaped to this place, wondered what it might be like to be from here. The day before that day, he asked me to marry him. We were at the blue kitchen table in our tiny apartment in Davis, cradling our new yerba mate gourd in his palm and my palm, his sip, my sip. He asked me and I said yes, but I was floored. He wants to marry me. No one has ever wanted to marry me. My daughter was not there when he asked me. She was 4 years old. When she came back, I told her we're getting married. And the ring, she said, oh, the ring is beautiful. Can I wear it? Can I have a ring too? Can we all get married? I don't know how much I love the ring until it's on my ring finger. I feel like a little girl in love with the shimmering diamond, a married girl, a wanted girl. It's from the 1920s, a sizable square-cut diamond. White gold, a band of smaller diamonds. It catches rainbows in the right alignment of the sun, becomes a prism. It is loose enough that I can twirl the diamond around my finger. I do this to have something to do. It's been someone's ring before. Maybe she's dead, maybe she lost it, maybe it's always been in some glass case, decades of never having gone anywhere except velvet surface to velvet surface, never meaning anything at all. Ty is standing in the middle of the dismantled room, and there is no ring. It's not here, he says. It's okay. We'll find it in the boxes or bags. We'll find it someday, he says. Tell the truth, Ty says. If you threw it in the ocean, I wouldn't care. I would still love you. I didn't, I promise. Because if you threw it into the ocean, that's okay. It's even romantic, but you would tell me, right? I would, I promise. And my madness begins. I stare into the little nooks beneath the stairs where the rain pools and washes leaves and rocks into the field below us. I look through everything twice, 3 times, 4 and 5 times, crawl around on my knees with the flashlight and run a bent paperclip beneath the crown molding. I shake out everything in the laundry basket, listen for the little clang of metal with each blanket whipped out over and over again. My daughter isn't around for this. If she were, we wouldn't tell her what we were doing. It's the end of an era, we joke. The day the ring is lost is the last day of a Mayan epoch, and everyone talks about it on the news. We are packing up to leave California, sell everything that doesn't fit to drive the car to Indiana. People come to buy the last things we own, and I stare at the bottoms of their shoes when they leave with our little couch, tables, mattress, futon. The room empties out, and we have only boxes. I pack them, dump everything out, and pack them again. And when everything is out, I sweep again, check the same places again. I wait for the sound of the ring, believe that I'll turn around and see it in the middle of the floor. I squeeze the edges of the comforter with holes in it that I once pilfered stuffing from for my daughter's hand-stitched bunny. I imagine the ring is tucked inside, and I rip open the whole thing, pull out its quilting, and sand pours out from all those trips to the beach. I tell Ty I feel like crying even though I know it's just a ring. He says he does too. I tell him about a woman on a television show I saw when I was young who lived in a house haunted by a ghost that would find her lost things. She would wake up in the morning to find her favorite necklace neatly laid out on her bedside table. I want a ghost too. Ty says if someone said they'd take the dog or the ring, he'd give them the ring. He says he wrecked the car last year. That was like losing a handful of rings. We stop in Santa Fe, then Atlanta, and Ty drives the car to Indiana while I fly my daughter back to California and leave her there. I fly to Indiana. I resent the things that make it there, bobby pins and hairpins, extra buttons. I think like a lost ring, where I would fall, all the energy, displaced grief. People lose a lot of things, like memory or the feeling in their hands when they sleep. I am losing my daughter. I remember when my mother's rings were stretched too thin, snapped in two right at the point of hold. I have a vivid dream weeks after I lose the ring that I find it at the bottom of a trash can beneath the plastic bag. In the news, there's a couple who finds a ring in their used car, and they spend years looking for the person who lost it, tracking title records, calling leads. A woman finds her lost wedding ring in her own garden when she pulls a carrot out of the ground around the carrot. A man is looking for the owner of a lost ring he found along the road shoulders of Tahoe. I'm thousands of miles away from the ring, so I write up a story and post it on the internet. I want to be found when it's found. I call pawn shops, the gas station, the park rangers, the landlord, the oil change place, the police. I write a police report, attach photos of the ring out of focus. I can't believe I even have a photo. Ty reminds me to concentrate on the bar exam. That's how you'll get back to our daughter. I write to the metal detector groups, a humble faction of the world that hunts for treasure, unites the lost with the losers. I make maps for them, arrows pointing to where we walked. I conduct them from afar, first a young kid and his dad who go to the wrong house, and then a man who boasts he can find anything with one swoop of his most sensitive metal detector. He tries for me at the cottage. He's confident because he once found a ring in a Safeway parking lot, another in a soccer field. My electric ghost, hovering over the area and looking for something I've lost in a place I couldn't wait to leave. I check the weather in Fair Oaks, rain and more rain. Imagine the ring if it's there somewhere burrowing into the earth. He messages me from the cottage after he loses the light of day, says he found no ring, but tells me about a buffalo nickel from the 1930s, asks me if I lost an antique thimble in the garden. That's his life. Finding. He says he'll go back again on a good day. Good luck, he says, looking in those places near the ocean. I don't say how I lost it. No one asks. It would make me undeserving. I can't find anyone to hover detectors over the Highway 1 turnouts along the eroding bluffs. I imagine millions of rings in the underbrush. The attachment I have to unattachable things is wavering. A few weeks pass, and I am used to it gone. The dog licks the wedding band on my hand, the ring that survives, and I remember how much she loves to find little things to chew on, like guitar picks and sugar packets, loves to lick metal. I squeeze her roundness and tell Ty maybe it's in her, maybe she's our ocean. It's lost in a place where we know it's lost, and that's enough. Ty says not to think about it. I don't tell anyone else what happened, and it's as if it never happened. It was in one room, a finite space, in safekeeping. I'm packing my bags to visit my daughter. It's the first time I'll go back. I'm packing slowly. I can't concentrate and can't study anyway. I revise this piece. I end it at safekeeping. I feel done. I shake clothes out as I pack them, shower, search for the toys my daughter requested that I bring from a room filled with things she may or may not remember because they've been there for nearly a year now. I grab the bag I've been carrying with me for weeks that's been to the film shoots, been shoved around in airplanes and the footwells of cars, carried plane tickets, journals, books, snacks, toys. I've already checked it for the ring probably a few dozen times. I pull out napkins and wrappers from the pockets, coins, pens, and what looks like a keychain. I don't have my glasses on, so I hold the bag up closer to see, and the ring comes into focus. I'm home alone, and Ty is at work. Outside the window, I can see the empty barn and fast-moving thin clouds with the sun behind them, passing over me, rippling out like a shaken water surface. A songbird belts out a song that sounds like a siren. Mockingbird, maybe. I don't know how to make sense of it all. The moment when it happens feels like such a betrayal of the loss I've already inherited. I can't even look at it. I slip it back on behind the band that has always anchored it so it wouldn't slip off unbeknownst to me and call Ty. He says, "You found the ring we lost." I'm humbled. I let him change the story. Thank you. Next is Bill Hughes, and I'm going to read an introduction for Bill that was written by Ryan Baresh. This version of Bill Hughes sprung forth from the space between two railroad ties and floated down the Big Muddy on the back of a boll weevil. He's wrung his hands on every hymnal from Tallahatchie to Person's Pass, and came a-stumbling through over the grapevine hot as an Appalachian swinehide in August. He's so good at poetry, he had 2 books before coming to CCA. His book of poetry, Down in the Western Dark, was released to rave reviews on Amazon, one of which stated, "I have never in my life read a molasses snail trail like this. The perfunctory persuasion of his Swisher Cat lyricism has me pining for the cool stalks of moonshadow, moonshine cornfields of Babylon, but only if that Babylon was filled with good old boys and girls chewing and spitting the cud of infinite eternal regression." Bill's first collection of poems, Vagrancy, is selling new right now on Amazon for $115, which makes it a better collector's item than any book from our distinguished faculty. He said to me once under the soft red lights of an absinthe grotto, "Son, the world is nothing but hello, goodbye, then push and the crash." I nodded. He explained, "Electrons and pillbox hats." And it was then that I learned everything I needed to learn from grad school. As a peer and classmate, no one was more willing to discuss the expanding dimensions of the universe or what will happen when we reach singularity or the starting line men for the 1996 Cleveland Browns, often all at the same time. As a student, no one will ever wear a tan trench coat better. And as a friend, no one tips better than Bill. After graduation, look for him atop the Mars rover, a jug of moonshine and a soothsaying owl on his shoulder, waiting for his train to take him on down the line, singing the blues and hoping that someday we're all going to make it with him to that $1 million bash. Ladies and gentlemen of the earth, the poet Bill Hughes.
N- None of that is true. I'd like to thank all the teachers I've been, and writers, same thing. I've been lucky enough to work with here. You've been really great, better than I thought. I knew you'd be great, but you were even better. And also thanks to my dad for coming all the way out here from Ohio today. I have some poems. This first one is called The Great Fog Wars. Rampant, lonesome everywhere, mindset of the deviated eye, chamber of forbidden bells, letters that could break a tongue, lonely place locked out of names, the sorrow of talk, the expression of every. A madman could stumble through steam and find my clear casement of air. A red bed with a scarred lock stands upright. Where are you? This is a Monday. We know it by 3 rays of light. When I speak, I fumble a luggage train to your front door. If you grip the latches enough to set them aside, then we will trade horses and disappear. We will break out of jails when nights fall, wake our eyes to old cages when days break. We will go on like this for longer than we breathe. Midtown. Government infantry off-duty protest with filled barroom stations, curbside heat has twisted the flagpole, the adventurous. Desks hide behind walls, and they're trying to break into the kitchen with paper and skulls. Yes. Waterfall over the desk, my shins. Strings of vehicles plunge miles into infinite divisibility, break through Nautilus air chambers. Any number over 0 curls into whirlpool. It smells like a ghost outside. The colossal series of factories. The foghorn fiddler, moan of some hymn from the gutter, mumbling static of 17 million people trying to think. Asylum patients peek out the curtains, 150,000 miles away. Long walk for the very faithful, killing for a living, street talk and night markets strung across countries, under high water marks of vomiting rain. Something is out there breathing steam down the halls of trumpeting white flags. The red bulbs on the nets cast from cranes light up, high on every side. 17 inches of sleep come down on the walkways. The Rue Morgue arcades. Footsteps in the summer, friends heading home early, still. I'll go to the Rue Morgue arcades. Avenue plazas and waterfront bars, old sounds of ships and trains, voices splashing in the dark, behind the riverbank lights. Everybody's in the business. There is no escape. We'll find one anyway. When the clock strikes 2, think I'll take the ferry and sit beneath the lamps. Wish I were some signal for the waiting wind. Pass. I come down with my hat caved in. You walk me past the park, by the frozen cement posts. Grown men and women lilt on the benches and gaze from inside the last ray of light. Then they get up and walk in squares without blinking. You live in a different world where rotations are all complete, and life in the scarlet folds of scarlet steel floats like mercury clouds over a dark bridge. Lake the drowsy noon. The porcelain clouds were made of birds, lake bed hibiscus and French braid undone. Hazel sticks spoke to me, a scout of maybe, weather and love, and how we share particles, red as cane stalks around, hot water in the air. Cut down at the voice of her words gurgled from their umbered den, from jagged ions to glass stream, where no one notices a house, while gravity swarms its sieve. Mouth lantern. Nights of starving light, dark as the beginning. He was in the woods of a beast when he looked downtown. I arrived at the pattern of corroded steps and slowed. She cuts her hair with every moon. Pearl on a pillow and shade where you lie. Missed slow steps on the high keys of my piano below the hospital. Steam stinks from the dumpster. Cigarettes and perfume fever this pale room. The daydream lives in my stomach. Red violin blocks. Sat there with my palm up against my skull. Fever siren sighed the sewers. Mail train to upstate kept singing, followed its miles through my heart. Pressed my fingers against the glass. Thank you. This is an introduction for Jill Tydor, written by Amelia Whitcomb. Jill Tydor's writing seduces you with a kind of full-color brilliance that leaves you dazzled and dazed and breathless in wonder. Then something shakes you out of your reverie, a careful word, an expansion of the camera angle, and you suddenly realize that the amethyst dawn being described is actually the pooling of blood in a dead man's eye, and the impressionistic landscape you are studying is comprised of the tender meshwork of scar tissue decorating a bulimic's trachea. This is where Jill's true art lies, in her deft handling of the interplay between the beautiful and the horrible. She scrapes the shallow sheen off the picturesque to reveal the gross underbelly growing like toxic mold just below. With a kind of clockwork orange degree of control, she focuses our gaze on the most savage of terrors until we are forced to see the sublime allure that resides even there. And this is when Jill Tydor's work truly takes hold. This is what nags at you and lingers with the sweet, digging persistence of summer corn between incisors, because this is the very point where it dawns on you that pleasure can't exist without pain, beauty can't thrive without the grotesque, and that to live and to be human is to have the capacity to experience it all, feel it all, inflict it all, create it all. It is an important reminder, and one I never tire of when Jill is the one reminding me of it. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my supreme pleasure to introduce to you Jill Tydor.
Just a few quick thank yous to Amy Fan, Al Young, Cooley Windsor, Eric Olson, who always said, "It's not done, it's just due." And especially my committee, Anita Marisvani, and my ultimate cheerleader and fellow word nerd, Rebecca Bloyd. So thank you. This is the beginning of my thesis, which is a novella project that I'm finally calling such, set in the South. It's in Baton Rouge, Louisiana in 2008. They found his body by the levee. He lay there where the wild grasses sloped into mud that ran ankle deep, thick like clay, a maelstrom of broken dragonfly wings, rusted bicycle spokes, bits of glass, and lost pocket change. He lay there where the runoff water from the drainage pipe 50 yards away collected under the weight of his limbs, beneath the small of his back, dampening the hair at the base of his skull, seeping slowly into his ear canals. Below his eyes were dark purple half-moons where the blood had pooled, giving the illusion of a fitful night's sleep. His chest was stained a violent red. The circles of blood had grown in size and scope, creating rings of different hues, the color disintegrating slowly as it faded into the background with each heartbeat. The investigators at the Baton Rouge Police Department counted 4 bullet holes, 3 to the chest scattered like buckshot, puncturing skin and a myriad of internal organs, but erratic in hypothesized intent and scope. A final gunshot wound to the head was fired off at enough of a distance to keep the brain largely intact. Perhaps it was a hurried move or last-minute show of mercy, but that was not for the technicians to decide. The investigators took their photographs, capturing every angle, trying to decipher range and culpability between each flash. They filled notebooks with inky drawings, plotting points of impact with geometric precision, calculating time of death, time of discovery, rate of decomposition, body temperature, internal decay. But math never led to motive. The police surmised that the man who shot him was probably long gone. He had likely driven across state lines in a stolen cream-colored Cadillac, filling up on gas and dehydrated cheese products at a pay-and-pump off the freeway, or pawning gold rings or guitars or VCRs at shops buried in industrial parks where the men behind the counters never asked for last names or registration papers, where wads of cash could be traded for cold beers, hot sandwiches, and cheap blow. For him, Baton Rouge was probably no more than a stopping point on the way to Little Rock or Dallas or even Las Vegas. Bigger cities with more money, more people, less time to notice the things that weren't real. Either way, the brilliant violence of his death lit everyone up like candles, burning hot and white. The last vestiges of Indian summer washed New Orleans in a hazy glow. I absent-mindedly pulled at the bits of peeling paint on the edge of my chair as I sunned my legs in the late afternoon light. The humidity had caused the paint to bubble and stretch elastically, and I fidgeted with it while slowly turning the pages of the New Orleans Times-Picayune. When I eventually learned of his murder, buried on page B3 under an ad for Dyson vacuum cleaners, I shut my eyes tight, trying to block out the light, feeling the weight that darkness holds. I let my palms rest flat against the newsprint. Beneath them, the metal ovals of the patio table looped over and over again. The sun warmed my neck, and I felt the heat with a new kind of intensity. It can't be true, I thought. I closed my eyes again and began to grab hold of the image of his face in my mind. I thought about his eyes, the shape of his nose. Every detail seemed just out of reach, and I pulled at the memory, hoping for things to come into focus. I then thought about the things I knew were true. I was the oldest of 2 girls, born to Scott and Rachel Benson, who had lived in the White House at the end of Beverly Road. They planted the magnolia tree 3 days after moving in, when they were still in love. Rachel, for as long as I could remember, belonged to Anna Ray and Mr. Danny, and in return, Anna Ray and Mr. Danny belonged to us. The origin of my parents' relationship to these 2 figures was unknown to me, predating my birth by many years. I had always seen them as an organic part of my existence. Where my mother left off, Anna Ray began. It wasn't until the year I turned 6 that I fell madly in love with Mr. Danny. We were sprawled on the living room carpet, propped up on elbows, when he picked up a pencil and began to teach me to draw. He said art was about seeing the world in extraordinary shapes and colors. He told me to close my eyes and dream about things bigger than myself. I watched the way his hand slid across the page. My heart began to beat wildly as my own fingers mimicked his movements. Mr. Danny liked me because I was a quiet child, drinking everything in with my eyes. He said he was a quiet child too, taking refuge in the beauty of the world around him. And because I was in love, I began to tell him my secrets. I whispered in his ear the daily scandals of my playthings, and Mr. Danny would listen, offering a solemn nod from time to time. He would tell me stories of his lonely childhood up north, a place I could only imagine in shades of blue. This was the genesis of our relationship, when I loved Mr. Danny, and Mr. Danny loved me. When I fell in love with Mr. Danny, it was 1986. Baton Rouge was like a fruit set out to ripen in the afternoon sun. A growing petrochemical industry had brought new, young, business-minded transplants to the area, plucking recent grads from Louisiana State University before they even had paper diplomas in hand, luring real estate developers and McDonald's franchises to swell the outskirts of the city with possibilities. Amid all this burgeoning potential, however, were the sleepy settlers of the Old South. Generation after generation, we sat on our back porches, drinking sweet tea, watching the sun set, thinking only of the moment we inhabited and how right it was. Our children filled schools and sidewalks with happy chatter, snake coil fireworks, big wads of pink bubblegum stuffed between cheeks, sticky fingers, and watermelon seeds. We dragged home blue coolers full of red crawfish from the corner stand, steaming and slick with salt and filet seasoning, to be poured over newspapers on kitchen tables, piled high with new potatoes and hunks of corn on the cob, and the occasional artichoke turned a grayish brown from the big metal pot, but still meaty with flavor, ready to be scraped between teeth, to be stripped bare. We went to festivals with crinoline banners celebrating oysters or strawberries or full moons or Louis Armstrong. We drove in caravans to New Orleans to catch thick strands of plastic beads in the street, drink long cocktails with bits of fruit wedges, drink Bacchus or the Voodoo Queen or the end of the summer. We bought porcelain masks and long silk dresses for elaborate masquerade balls. Masks that would later collect dust in the attic or shed flakes of white plaster down the long hallway in the back of the house. We had watched the red stick city from sunrise to sunset, watched the rains come and flood the streets, choked full of water that jumped curbs, saturating lawns, creating miniature lakes under the shade of century-old oak trees. We had watched the sun leach grass dry, turning first a sandy blonde, then brown like summer skin, brittle and crisp to the touch. Once in recent memory, we had seen it snow, a soft flutter of flakes that fell like a veil upon the grass. School was canceled despite the fact that no more than an inch or two was predicted to fall and the weather remained relatively mild. Children who had never seen it snow before plied their hands with mismatched socks and scraped eagerly at the frozen earth, hoping to pelt one another with tennis ball-sized weapons of frozen slush. A rather diminutive snowman perched on an isolated stretch of Perkins Road, waved greedily at passers-by until his carrot nose was eaten by birds and his features eventually eroded. Thank you. All right, it's my lucky day. I get to introduce Kristin Adochio, and it's an introduction written by Erin Gindershaw, so it's kind of like the best of both worlds. All right. One day, Kristin Adochio is going to make you cry. She's not going to pull your hair or piss on your cornflakes. Maybe. It'll be understated, delicate. She'll put on a record, Sam Cooke or Otis Redding, maybe a little Stevie Wonder. Turn the lights down, offer you a joint if you're into that sort of thing. You'll be relaxed, more comfortable than you've been in a long time. And that's when Kristin will make her move. The words will spill effortlessly. They'll be colorful and affecting, full of cleverly maneuvered twists and deep, genuine honesty that your whole body will be honored to absorb. You'll lose track of time, space, and when she addresses you by name, you won't notice. This will make her laugh and think of something new. These words will come dexterously, too, but they'll be different. Sharp, risible, atypical, and embarrassing. Not for her, for you. You'll be so wrapped in the candor of her comedy that you'll put yourself right in it. 1 minute you'll be chuckling along, and the next thing you know, you're sweating, hooting, bouncing around in your chair, tears gushing out of your eyeballs. At the end of the night, she'll walk you to your door. You'll adjust your T-shirt, rub your eyes, stand up straight, and hope to God you don't sound desperate as you ask, "Call me later?" She'll smile, nod reassuringly, and you'll spend your entire BART ride home fighting the urge to swing by Sacred Rose and have her name tattooed on your ass. Something you need to tell us, Erin? When you wake up the next morning, you'll feel rejuvenated, borderline elated, and super fucking grateful to know the magnificent Miss Kristin Adochio.
Holy shit, it's scary up here. Thanks, Erin. That was hot. Wow. Okay, it's here. Gotta do something. All right, so I'll thank you to all my dudes at CCA. You guys are all awesome. I've been really freaking lucky to work with all of you guys. And then to all my teachers, Shanti, Dodie, Donna, Faith, Rebecca, Cheryl Dunier, Eric Olson, and then my amazing thesis committee, Carolyn and Al. I'd be nothing without all you guys. And then thanks to my family and friends who took up the entire front row. Woo! I'm sure you guys all look good in your underwear, but I'm not going to look up. So I'm going to read you guys the prologue to my thesis, which is an evil memoir. Shit. It's called A Piece of It. It's not funny either, so thanks, Aaron, for setting that up. All right. It's 2012. She's in the shower after work on a Tuesday, and she's crying. She's not crying because she's in the shower. She's not in the shower because she's crying. She just doesn't know what else to do. It's not like something happened. She didn't find out she was accidentally pregnant. She didn't have a hard day at work. No customers actually asshole enough to ruin her day. Her homework is done. Her mom sent her $100 in the mail. And the guy she is currently crushing on lunch bombed her on her break, so she got to spend 15 delicious minutes having a conversation with him. But here she is, bawling like a baby into her moisturizing bar of Dove soap. She feels the fiberglass splinters of violation in her chest, right in the center, grinding, shifting. She can barely breathe, but she won't take her face out from under the shower head. The water pressure in her apartment is shit. It trickles out of the holes. Small, limp streams of water travel down her face, her sternum, between her legs, and down her thighs, some dropping off at the kneecaps. The water is hot. The steam is heavy and visible all around her. It clings to the lime-spotted faucet and the empty towel racks and the mirror attached to the wooden medicine cabinet. When she opens her mouth, steam rolls around and it tastes like Dove soap. She rubs the baby pink bar between her hands and feels the suds form through her fingers. The slick scent of moisturizing agents slide up her right arm and over her shoulder, heading for the arc of her back. Her fingers glide over her shoulder blade and shudder across a dip in the layer of skin, the first one. Her hand stops, the section of skin beneath it fractured like a fault line. Without moving her hand, she swings her finger back and forth, and the swish-swish motion goes unnoticed by her skin. You see, when doctors cut you open, in times of duress, they don't necessarily care about breaking anything on the way in. So when the doctor sliced an opening around her right shoulder blade to tape her collapsed lung back together, they didn't have time to care. The nerve endings are dead. She can feel the pressure of finger to skin, but she can't feel the sensation. The doctors used synthetic materials to patch her lung up, but her body didn't take. They recoiled, refused, rejected. She slept in a coma for a week. She moves her hand from her back over her shoulder again and sweeps the suds across her chest. Her hand snags on a bump in the center. She stops soaping and looks down. She runs her finger along the 7-inch scar and winces when she hits pins 2, 5, and 7. The second one. There are 12 pins total. They hold her chest cavity together. The doctors broke her sternum when they had to take her heart and lungs out and pump them on a special machine to fix her trachea. Did you know that the chest bone isn't really a bone at all? It's cartilage. She didn't know that until the doctors told her 6 years after the surgery that the pins could come out if she wanted. After so many years, the cartilage had long since welded itself back together. The pins, like twist ties, no longer needed. It's been 9 years since the surgeries. Sure, she wants to take them out, flatten out the parts she can, but to reopen the whole thing, reheal the whole thing, she doesn't know if it's worth it. She doesn't know if she can wait 8 months for the deep purple lines to dull, wait years for those lines to melt until finally they become a shade lighter than the rest of her skin, decades until they become a part of her again. The process slow, the progress minimal. She waits. She's not paying attention. The water pools in her mouth, and for a moment she can't breathe. Her hand is pressed to the center of her chest like she's doing the Pledge of Allegiance. The pins stick out beneath her skin. She can feel them. The flesh, stretched so thin by her lean build, her rib cage is sometimes visible. The pin that sticks out the most is right in the center of her chest, where bone dips to breast, right before the scar stops. It looks like a fingernail pushing through the skin. Feels like a metal staple from the staple gun they use to keep the black and white tablecloths from blowing away at work. The nerve endings running across her chest catch and pinch when she moves. Sometimes they stick so far out, her mom starts crying at the kitchen counter and her dad says everything will be okay, while they ride an hour to the hospital she had surgery at, just to find out her chest is naturally shifting and the pin is caught on her scar tissue. There's a small piece of normal skin before the mystery scar, number 3. It looks like one of those fizzy bath balls in the middle of dissolving. It looks like someone made an oopsie in the operating room, dropped the scalpel between calculated scrapes. Her hand moves down to her stomach, number 4. This one is 4 inches, the size of a mini Sharpie, permanent too. It's her least favorite because it hurt the most to heal. The most uncomfortable place for a deep wound is the stomach. It's the center of all movement. Laughing, eating, sitting, turning, swallowing, coughing, breathing, walking, shuffling, peeing, sneezing, hugging. Back then, she couldn't do anything without it hurting. This scar stops a centimeter above her belly button, and the bottom part is permanently puffed out because of the way muscle rebuilds when it's broken. The whole scar is like a ripped page from her marble notebook, jagged and uneven all the way down, some places wider than others, the texture cinched together like ruffles. To its immediate left is another scar, number 5. This one shaped like a splintered toothpick. It used to be round and the size of a dime. The purple skin somehow darker from the shape. She had reconstructive surgery on it in 2005. Her uncle, the doctor, couldn't stand the look on her face when he caught her staring at the wide violet markings mapping out her new anatomy in the mirror on New Year's Eve when she thought no one was watching. She couldn't accept their apology for saving her life, so her uncle found a doctor willing to set aside 4 hours and 14 minutes of his time to turn the dime into a thin line, to bring the width of all 9 scars in by about half an inch. He said, "Give it time, you're young, they will fade." At 16, she thought fade meant disappear. She's crying again. Tears mixed with limp streams of water, Dove soap evaporating around her. These scars, this memory, she carries it with her every day. And even when she doesn't think about it, it's just there. It will always be there, resting between her breasts, sitting on her stomach, hanging down her back, pockmarking her rib cage. There's no real escape. They separate her from everyone else. She's not the same. Her body is not the same. She misses the smooth connection of skin. No fault lines to upset the foundation, just smooth arcs and curves and joints, all bagged together in one package. Now she's pieces out of place. Her stomach is in a 2-inch slot in her throat and wrapped around part of her right lung. The top layer of skin is dead from her right nipple to the tip of the scar in a half-moon shape around her shoulder blade. Low-cut tops make her uncomfortable. Bathing suits make her feel like human ceviche. She longs for collarbones like a fisherman longs for his shoreline, the smooth and sensual section of skin from clavicle to chest bone. There's nothing sexier to her, and she misses being sexual. She wonders about the way men look at her. She wonders what it would be like for her crush to see her naked. Would he accept these imperfections? Would he understand? Would he eventually love her because of them or despite them? Because her body is no longer whole. When she looks in the mirror, she doesn't feel sexy anymore. She feels hopeless. And when she stretches her arms above her head and arches her back in the middle of intimacy, for a moment she's a goddess again, lost in sensuality. But when she catches a glimpse of herself, she recoils. She feels sullied, no longer desirable. But they mark her survival, and she has to appreciate that, right? She has to appreciate the 2 inches of her stomach muscle that fixed her trachea so she could eat, breathe, and speak again. She has to appreciate the limp lung that still pumps oxygen every day, although a little more raggedly than before. She has to. And even when it gets so cold outside, she can see her breath in the air, and she gets a little cough that pinches and twists the scar tissue behind her right nipple until it itches, and she's standing in line at the ATM, rubbing her right breast like she's massaging a hard-on. She has to appreciate it, right? But she can't help think what it would be like if she didn't have that pinch and twist and burn. Think about what it would be like to be whole again, from the inside out. And she does, for the most part, appreciate. But sometimes she can't. Sometimes it's too hard. It's too hard to ask her to bypass the mirror and appreciate the piece of scar tissue that doesn't even peel from a summer burn. But there are the moments she just lives. The days she wakes up and loves herself, all of herself, because she's not just pieces out of place. She's a human being. She's a living, breathing, talking being that sometimes questions her body, her desirability, her sexuality, her normalcy. She can't answer these, though. Even she doesn't know how she feels. Or rather, she doesn't know how she feels right now, after work on a Tuesday, crying in the shower. Thanks.
Another round of applause for all our great readers tonight.